The day my husband was buried, my son chose a yacht over a graveside. I stood in a black dress at 9:00 a.m., holding my phone and a silence that felt like a scream, while the doorbell kept ringing and the house kept filling. The governor arrived. Richard's college roommate turned banker arrived. Our old pastor arrived, everyone but the tall, dark-haired son people expected to see beside me. When they asked, and they always asked, I said Nathan was processing his grief privately, which was technically true if poolside mimosas counted as a ritual. By noon, 300 people had gathered, and I had performed the same tight smile so many times it felt stapled to my face. I learned to navigate condolences like a choreography. Thank you. That's kind. He was an extraordinary man. Yes, I'll pass your message to Nathan. Beneath the rhythm ran an ache I couldn't manage how easily a child you raised can become a stranger. Somewhere around the reception, I checked my phone and saw Nathan's story, him and Vanessa, clinking glasses, captioned with blessings and a song about good times, posted right as we lowered Richard into the ground. I turned the phone off, tucked it away, and finished the performance for the day. After the last guest left, Richard's study felt like a sanctuary built out of paper and wood. 40 years of photographs watched me from the walls, a wedding day grin, a first fish, graduation robes, our life, catalogued. The phone rang. Nathan apologized with the efficiency of a calendar reminder. He was grieving differently. Vanessa, audible in the background, said we'd handle the legal stuff when they returned. They landed on Tuesday evening, tan and relaxed. By Wednesday dinner, they were gently proposing, I consider a nice condo for someone your age, while Vanessa pitched a retirement community as if it were a luxury resort. Nathan spoke about the company with the confidence of a man who had never read a balance sheet influencers, social media, perhaps even cryptocurrency. I asked if he'd discussed this with David, Richard's partner of 15 years. Nathan said David was old school. Vanessa smiled like a brand campaign had just gone live. On Thursday morning, we took the elevator to the top floor of the building Richard helped finance. Mr. Brennan, a lawyer whose voice could fold steel, greeted us with practiced sympathy. David was there, formal and careful, seated across a city Richard had once mapped with his work. Mr. Brennan opened the file and read words that would reset the fault lines of our family. To my beloved wife, Margaret, gratitude, partnership, the kind of tenderness that makes your throat hurt. To my son, Nathan, a hope he would learn the difference between earning and expecting, building and inheriting. Then the sentence that silenced the room. Richard left his entire estate properties, business interests, all financial assets to me, with complete confidence in my judgment. Any provision for Nathan, he wrote, would be at my discretion and on my timeline. Vanessa blinked like a camera flash had misfired. David stared at his folded hands. Nathan tried to calculate a reality where those words could be an error. What does that mean? He asked. Mr. Brennan's tone softened. It meant exactly what it said. Everything was mine to steward, or share, or withhold. In the elevator, Nathan murmured that perhaps his father just wanted to make sure I was taken care of first, as though this were a prelude, not a verdict. On the drive home, silence performed its own cross-examination. At the house, silence split. Vanessa erupted. There must be a legal challenge. Nathan cut her off in a voice that sounded momentarily like Richard's. It was always Dad's money. He said quietly. The moment passed as quickly as it came. In Richard's study, I found the envelope with my name in his hand. I had been married long enough to recognize the weight of a letter by the heaviness of its intent. The paper trembled before my fingers did. My dearest Margaret, it began, and my breath shortened. He had seen what I had refused to say aloud. The last 2 years had turned our son into someone we did not recognize, and the woman he loved into an accountant of other people's futures. He acknowledged the cruelty of what he had done and trusted the hardness of it to my softer heart. If Nathan can prove himself worthy, you will know. And if he cannot, let me protect your future when I am no longer here to protect your heart. Nathan knocked on the door, alone for the first time in weeks. He apologized with words that found their marks, but somehow didn't carry weight. Regret is light until it lifts something. I asked about Vanessa, and in the hesitation that followed, I heard the old story repeating. He wanted to change, but not at the cost of losing what he loved more than the lesson. I told him I needed time. For years, I had given it freely. For once, I decided to keep some for myself. By morning, I knew I needed to start writing the future in firmer ink. I asked Nathan to come by without Vanessa. On the coffee table, I placed Richard's old wooden jewelry box. "Your father left you something," I said. He opened the lid, expecting triumph, and found a Timex. Not the gold anniversary watch, not the luxury one that winked at boardrooms. The $20 plastic and metal watch Richard wore when we were newly married, and groceries were a ledger. Beneath it, a note in Richard's hand, the watch represented the only time in his life he fully understood the value of work, sacrifice, and the quiet math of building instead of inheriting. "I hope someday," he wrote, "you will understand why this is worth more than any amount of money I could give you." Nathan looked up at me, eyes glass bright with panic. "What are you saying?" he whispered. I took a breath that felt like closing a door and opening a window. "I'm saying this is your inheritance. Nathan. All of it." Nathan's face collapsed as if gravity had doubled in the room. He stammered that he had apologized, that he meant it, that he wanted to change. I reminded him that words could not rewrite absence, could not lift a coffin, could not erase the sight of him toasting champagne while his father was lowered into the ground. He dropped the watch onto the floor, its clatter louder than any argument, and spat accusations that I was bitter, that Vanessa had been right about me, that I was just an old woman jealous of his happiness. Then he smiled with venom and promised not to attend my funeral either before slamming the door so hard the windows shook. Alone. I picked up the watch. It felt heavier than gold because it carried every ounce of Richard's belief that lessons must be learned, even if painfully. For 3 weeks, silence became my companion. No calls, no texts, no lawyers pounding on the door. David phoned regularly, checking in with the gentle insistence of a partner shouldering burdens. He assured me the company was running smoothly, that Nathan had been asking questions about inheritance lawyers but had no real grounds. He sounded steady, the kind of anchor I thought I needed. Then one Thursday morning, Nathan reappeared at my door. He looked different, hair unwashed, clothes rumpled, eyes hollowed by something more than lack of sleep. Vanessa had left. He confessed flatly. She had demanded money for a new apartment as her parting gift. Nathan's fall was finally complete, and he admitted with a kind of quiet humility that he had become everything his father feared. He told me he had found a job at Murphy's Tavern, waiting tables and scrubbing dishes. A studio above the hardware store had become home. For once, his words felt anchored to action. He said he needed to figure out who he was without my husband's wealth cushioning every failure. I listened, torn between hope and suspicion, between wanting to see growth and fearing another performance. Time, I decided, would test his sincerity. For now. I let him walk away carrying his own weight for the first time in years. 6 weeks later, he returned for our regular dinners looking thinner but stronger, his hands marked by calluses, his words filled with stories of coworkers instead of parties. He seemed humbled in a way that even grief had not managed to make him. Around this time, David invited me to his office with urgent news. He said investors were circling, asking questions about whether I could manage Richard's empire, whether I was overwhelmed, whether I might be tempted to sell. He leaned forward, voice low, and suggested I consider bringing Nathan back into the business not as an heir, but as a protector who might spot threats I could not see. The logic made a certain kind of sense, and I wanted to believe it, but something in the warning unsettled me. That evening, Nathan and I discussed it over dinner. He was quick to recognize the danger. Dad always said the company was worth more intact than broken apart. He reminded me. We spoke of predators and weaknesses, of vultures in tailored suits. The conversation ended abruptly when the doorbell rang. Standing there was Tom Morrison, one of Richard's oldest friends, silver-haired, dignified, and warmly familiar. I invited him in, grateful for the kindness of a known face. But as the coffee cooled, Tom's words sharpened. He suggested I was overwhelmed, hinted that the company's value would erode without swift, experienced leadership. He proposed a buyout from reputable investors, promising me security and a peaceful retirement. Nathan bristled, his posture rigid, his voice clipped as he told Tom I had already refused. The mask slipped from Tom's smile before he departed with a promise to check back soon. When he left, the silence between Nathan and me was heavy with realization. He was my first vulture, Nathan said. An instinct told me he would not be the last. The next morning, I phoned David. His reaction chilled me. Tom, he admitted, had been making calls to other partners, asking about contracts and debts, probing vulnerabilities. Worse, David revealed Tom had been asking specifically about Nathan, whether resentment might make him a useful lever to pressure me. It was clear they wanted to use my son as the wedge to split apart Richard's legacy. That evening, Nathan came to dinner straight from his job, smelling of grease and beer, but carrying an intensity in his eyes I had not seen in years. He proposed a dangerous plan. If Tom expected a bitter, disinherited son eager for revenge, Nathan would play the role. He would feed them just enough to gain their trust, to find out who else circled in the shadows. It was reckless, but it was also the first time he had offered himself for the family instead of against it. For once, he wanted to protect what Richard had built. I studied him carefully, searching for signs of vanity or manipulation. Instead, I saw a flicker of Richard's strategic calm in our son's face. Against every instinct, I agreed. The next day, Nathan dressed in the relics of his wealth-tailored suit, polished shoes, and met Tom for lunch. He told him I was scared, indecisive, leaning too heavily on David. He spoke of watching me falter and seeing the company suffer. Tom devoured every word, nodding, smiling, promising opportunity. What if I could convince her to listen? Nathan whispered conspiratorially. Tom's shark smile returned. That, he said, would be very beneficial for everyone. Nathan shook his hand and left, stomach twisting. But we had the confirmation we needed. Tom Morrison was circling for a kill, and he thought Nathan was bait on his hook. What we didn't know yet was that Tom was not the hunter. Only a hound sent forward by a master we both trusted too much. 2 weeks passed with Nathan performing his role as the embittered son. He dripped carefully rehearsed doubts into Tom Morrison's eager ears, describing my supposed hesitations and fears, portraying me as a widow in over her head. Meanwhile, David and I quietly met with lawyers, securing protections around the company. It felt like we were winning a chess match, though I didn't yet realize someone else was moving the pieces. Then, one afternoon, Nathan returned from a meeting with Tom, his face pale, his hands trembling slightly as he set his jacket on a chair. "Mom," he said, voice lower than I'd ever heard it, "we have a much bigger problem than Tom." He explained that Tom hadn't been alone when Nathan arrived. David had been there, speaking with him about finalizing the acquisition and ensuring I didn't resist. The betrayal was so stark, I almost laughed. The man who had guided me through every step since Richard's death was the one orchestrating the attack. At first I rejected it, told Nathan he must have misunderstood, but as he gently laid out the pieces, the urgent warnings about investors, the encouragement to rely on him, the suggestion to bring Nathan back as a shield, it all rearranged itself into a picture too sharp to ignore. David had cast himself as my protector while he slowly pushed me toward surrender. That evening, when David called with his usual concern, I heard his words differently. He suggested we move quickly toward a partnership that would protect me by giving him operational control. His voice, once comforting, now dripped with calculation. I agreed to let him draft something, though I promised nothing. After we hung up, I sat in Richard's study and stared at the letter he had left me, his handwriting trembling yet certain. "Trust your judgment," he had written. For the first time, I felt ready to do exactly that. The following night, David arrived at my home carrying a folder of contracts. His smile was polished, his explanation thorough. The partnership he proposed was, on paper, a lifeline. In reality, it was a noose. He spoke of shared ownership, of me retaining majority, yet every clause quietly shifted control into his hands. I nodded along, asked questions, even feigned relief at his foresight. At the end, I told him I would have my lawyer review it overnight. He tried to discourage delay, warning of looming deadlines and imminent investor moves, but I smiled blandly and held firm. The moment he left, Nathan and I phoned our attorney and revealed everything. Together, we devised a plan to expose David outright. The next evening, I met him at his office, contracts ready to sign. I expected just him, perhaps Tom, but was met by 4 men, David, Tom, and 2 investors I had never seen. They smiled with oily assurance as David introduced them, calling me our partner in this exciting new chapter. I sat, placed my phone visibly on the table, recording app open. "Gentlemen," I said evenly, "please continue. I want this conversation documented." The effect was instant. David's genial face froze. Tom shifted uncomfortably. I let silence do its work before speaking again. "I know exactly what you have been doing. I know you've been coordinating to pressure me into selling, using my son as bait, creating artificial urgency so I'd trust David more. I know everything." My voice grew firmer with each word, the strength not entirely mine, but borrowed from Richard's memory. "This company is not for sale, and every word you speak tonight will be evidence." Then I stood, gathered my purse, and left them gaping. It was the first time since Richard's death that I felt powerful rather than lost. In the weeks that followed, the fallout was swift. Lawsuits sprouted like weeds, accusations flew, reputations cracked. David's finances drained under the weight of legal defense. Tom withdrew, his investors scattered. Through it all, Nathan remained at my side, steadier now, no longer begging for inheritance, but learning about responsibility. Then one afternoon he called me, excitement sparking through the receiver. "Mom, you won't believe this," he said. "David just offered to sell me his shares for almost nothing. He's desperate." I asked what he had said in return. Nathan smiled, his voice softer. "I told him I had to check with my business partner first." I blinked. "Your partner?" He paused. "Turns out Dad left a clause in the will. If I could prove myself worthy through actions, not words. You had discretion to bring me in as a junior partner." For the first time, I felt the letter's weight lift into clarity. Richard had trusted me to decide when Nathan was ready. Perhaps, finally, that time had come. 3 months later, Nathan and I shared the head table at the company's annual dinner. He spoke about teamwork, about lessons learned, about the value of building rather than expecting. The room applauded not just the speech, but the transformation. I sat quietly, watching the man my son was becoming, and felt Richard's presence in the space between us. Some stories end with loss, others with revenge. Ours found something rarer, justice and redemption. What Richard left me was more than money. He left trust, wisdom, and the reminder that the greatest inheritance is knowing who deserves a second chance and who never did. Like this story, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your voice matters here as much as the story itself.